2.4 has us graphing linear equations in standard with our learner. I will graph linear equations. Written in standard form. So short and to the point. So the first thing you need to know is what standard form is. Standard form, it's just another way of writing an equation or a linear equation. Slope-intercept form was y equals mx plus b. Standard form's a little bit different. Standard form is going to look like this. So it's going to be of that form where a, b, and c are just all numbers. I've seen in other books where a, b, and c actually have to be integers. That doesn't seem to be a requirement based on this book, but when you get into high school, maybe in Algebra 2, you might be told differently. It just really depends on the teacher. So this is what standard form looks like, and a and b are both not allowed to be 0. Like, they can't both be 0. So an equation that's written in standard form might look like this. So that right there is an equation written in standard form where a is 3. Notice that I used a capital B here, so that doesn't represent your slope. That's just another constant. So b is -2 and c is 2. There are two ways that you can graph these. The first way is to just take this and write it in slope-intercept form. So that's probably going to be your best bet most of the time. So all I need to do is solve for y to put it into slope-intercept form. So the first step is going to be to subtract 3x from both sides. So I'll subtract 3x, subtract 3x. So over here, I'm left with -2y. And then over here, I'm going to put this subtracting 3x first. So -3x plus 2. And I'm going to do that just so it's really in slope-intercept form where I have my mx plus b. This isn't quite solved all the way yet, though. I need to divide everything by -2. So when I do that, I get y equals, I have -3 over -2. That's a positive 3/2 x. 2 over -2 would be adding a -1 or subtracting 1. So now I have my slope. I have my y-intercept. So I can pretty easily graph this. I draw my coordinate plane. I start at -1, so down here, and I go up 3 over 2. 1, 2, 3 over 2. When I'm counting, remember I can also count backwards, but if I'm going backwards, I need to go down instead of up. So I go down 1, 2, 3, back 2, and there is my line. So that's one way that you can graph in standard form, and that will always work. This second way to graph in standard form works best when a and b are factors of c. So if you have something like 2x minus 4y equals 8. Here we have standard form, but both 2 and 4 go into 8, or 8 is divisible by 2 and 4. So this next method, which is using the intercepts, is a good way to do it. So what I'm going to do is, remember, the x-intercept is where y equals 0, and the y-intercept is where x equals 0. So what I can do is I can solve this equation when I substitute 0 for y, and I'll get a value for x. That'll tell me my x-intercept. I substitute 0 for x and solve for y. That'll tell me my y-intercept. That gives me 2 points to graph, and I can graph them. So it's going to look like this. Let's solve for the x-intercept first. So what that means is I'm going to plug in or substitute 0 for y. So 2x minus 4 times 0 equals 8. 4 times 0 is 0. So this whole term right here is going to go away, and I have 2x equals 8. Then I divide each side by 2, and I get x equals 4. So what that tells me is the point 4, 0 is one of the points on my line. I do the exact same thing, but now I'm going to substitute 0 for x, and I'm going to solve for y. So I put in 0 for x. Now basically that term goes away, so I'm left with negative 4y equals 8. I divide each side by negative 4, and I'll get y equals negative 2. So that tells me the point 0, negative 2 is also on my line. So then to graph it, I draw my x and y axis. I'm going to plot my x-intercept, which was 4, 0. My y-intercept is 0, negative 2. And I just have to connect those. And there's my line. So this way can be really, really easy, but it really does work best if, like I said, if a and b are factors of c, or if c is divisible by a and b. Otherwise, you get fractions, and those can be kind of a pain to graph, in which case I would probably go back up to the method from before where you put it into slope-intercept form. But you can do any equation either way. It just depends. So how about, I'm going to give you 2 different lines to graph real quick. So on your own, try graphing 2x plus y equals 5. And then also x plus 3y equals 6. So do those on your own real quick, and then turn this back on. We'll check your answers, and I will go over one type of word problem that you're going to see. Checking this on your own. 2 doesn't go into 5 evenly, so I'm going to solve this one by solving for y, or putting it into slope-intercept form. This is really easy to put to slope-intercept form. I just have to subtract 2x from each side. When I do that, I get y equals negative 2x, plus 5. Super simple. My intercept is 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, oops, went off my graph, 5. Let's just do that. There we go. My slope is negative 2. Remember, another way to write that is negative 2 over 1. So I'm going to go down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. Do a couple of those. Whoops. Pretend like my line is straight-ish. And there's my line. And you can see, if I had done a good job of drawing this line, my x-intercept is going to be right around 2.5. If I had plugged in 0 for y, I would get x equals 5/2, which is 2.5. So I can check it using the other method if I want. Over here, first let's plug in 0 for x, or I'm sorry, for y to get my x-intercept. So x equals 6. That was easy. That means my intercept is 6, 0. And then let's plug in 0 for x to find the y-intercept. 3y equals 6, divide each side by 3. Y equals 2, so my y-intercept is the point 0, 2. Let's graph these. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, and 0, 2. Again, my line's not especially straight, but that's what my graph would look like. For this final example, we have a word problem. It says you have $2.40 to spend on grapes and bananas. Graph the equation 1.2x plus 0.6y equals 2.4, where x represents the number of pounds of grapes, and y represents the number of pounds of bananas. Later on, you're actually going to learn how to come up with this equation based on the information that you're given. You're not quite given enough information here, but you will be coming up with that equation, but for now, you're just given the equation. You need to graph it for part A. And then for part B, it says interpret the intercepts. This is going to come up for the rest of the year where it says interpret the intercepts. What that means is put the intercepts in context of this problem. So the first thing we have to do is graph this 1.2x plus 0.6y equals 2.4. Because I'm going to have to do something with the intercepts anyway, I'm going to solve this by finding the intercepts. So let's start off by finding the x-intercept. That's where y equals 0. So 1.2x equals 2.4. Divide each side by 1.2, and I get x equals 2. So 2, 0 is one intercept. And then 1.2 times 0 plus 0.6y equals 2.4. That's 0, so it's just 0.6y equals 2.4. Divide each side by 0.6, and I'll get y equals 4. So my y-intercept is 0, 4. So if I want to graph this, well, again, I did not make this quite tall enough. There we go. So 0, 4 is my y-intercept, 2, 0 is my x-intercept, and here's my line. So if you think about what this situation is saying, I have $2.40 to spend. X is the pounds of grapes, Y is the pounds of bananas. So what this is actually telling me, 1 pound of grapes would cost $1.20. So that 1.2 is telling me how much per pound. This 0.6 is actually saying that each pound of bananas is 60 cents. So that's just where this equation came from. So any point on this line is showing me the combination of pounds of grapes and bananas I bought to spend $2.40. So for part B, interpret the intercepts. What that's saying is my x-intercept is where y equals 0. Remember, y is the number of pounds of bananas. So what this is saying is I didn't buy any bananas. So the x-intercept is how many pounds of grapes you can buy without buying any bananas. Or if you don't buy any bananas. And then this 0.4 is saying if you don't buy any grapes, you can buy 4 pounds of bananas. So you just have to remember what the x and the y represent to put it in context. So normally I would write that down, but I'm not going to make you watch me write it. So hopefully that's everything that you need for today. Remember, you can also flip through the examples in your book, are just a little bit different. So you can flip through and look at those if you need to. And you should be good to go with your homework. Good luck.